Hazrat Amirul Momineen, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Khamis, Jalsa Salana Bartania.
खिलाफत क्या है एक फजले अज़ीमे रब रहमा है.
For many of us, the International Annual Convention, or Jalsa Salana in UK, is a culmination of the best of the year, a spiritually uplifting and emotional experience. The reason for it all? The presence of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih. For us, the Jalsa ends there, and we wait for the next year. For Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, it's only a drop in the ocean compared to his countless activities during the year. Join us for the next hour while we take you on a journey with Hazrat Khalifatul Masih as we rewind 1 year back and provide you with just a small glimpse into just some of the activities of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih and relive those divine moments. After the memorable and blessed days of the International Annual Convention of last year, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih embarked on an incredible journey across the far east of the world. This was to be Hazur's second visit to the region. Previously, Hazur was here in 2006, his first stop, Singapore. What made his trip to Singapore even more spiritual than it would be was the fact that the Ahmadiyya Muslim communities in Malaysia and Indonesia have been violently persecuted for the past few years. Even the national authorities have given in to some demands of anti-Ahmadi religious extremists, and many activities of the community have been banned. Hazur coming to Singapore enabled these brave souls to see their Khalifa in person, rejuvenating their hopes and healing spiritual wounds. This meant that in over a week, Hazur spent a large portion of his time personally meeting more than 6,000 people from over 20 countries in the region who had come to meet their Khalifa. This love between the Khalifa and his beloved people was apparent in the emotional Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih at Masjid Taha.
हमारे मुखालफिन नहीं जानते कि अहमदियत वो हकीकी इस्लाम है जिसने अपनी जड़ें हमारे दिलों में लगाई हुई हैं और कोई मुखालफत और कोई तेज़ आंधी हमारे ईमान की मजबूत जड़ों को हमसे जुदा नहीं कर सकती. अहमदी खुदा ताला के फजलों के नज़ारों को देखकर किस तरह अपने खुदा से किए हुए अहद से मुंह मोड़ सकता है. हज़रत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के आशिक़ सादिक़ से जुड़कर फिर किस तरह अपने बंधन को तोड़ सकता है.
Hazur also held a bath or initiation ceremony for those who had just joined the Ahmadiyya community. To mark Hazur's visit, a special reception was held in the heart of Singapore, which was attended by leading public figures, government officials, foreign ambassadors, and leading statesmen. Prior to the reception, Hazur was interviewed by members of the Indonesian press. In his keynote address, Hazur explained the basis for a just economy, the need for equity between nations, the misrepresentation of Islam, and his concerns of an increasing risk of a third world war.
In the world, the people say what Islam is connected with violence. I think that's very wrong. So I'm very glad that a movement like yours will do something to correct this image that Islam means peace and harmony with other religions.
Islam teaches that all of these resources are the combined property and wealth of all mankind. Thus, all of these blessings are for all people, and so they should all derive benefit from them.
Tonight, I begin to listen to the real words of Islam, that is tolerance.
I really thank God for this wonderful man of God, that he had the vision to really speak about peace for the world. And that is really the message that really touched my heart.
Before he departed from Singapore, many members of the Indonesian press had the opportunity to speak to Hazur in light of the beliefs of the community and the wave of persecution in Indonesia.
I need new vision, interpretation about revelation, about prophet.
This question was also asked to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and it is mentioned in the Quran. And Kuffar says, "You just your vision, and then we shall accept some of your views." Why should, if we believe that it is from Allah, then why should we change? 125 years ago, it was only one man. And now when he died, he was almost 500,000. And now, every year, we are getting more than 500,000 people joining Ahmadiyyat. And now we are more than 100 million or 150 million. So why should we fear?
After a blessed 10 days in Singapore and bringing hope to thousands, Hazur departed for the next part of his journey to Australia. The Australian Ahmadiyya community is one of the earliest international communities established outside of India. Hazrat Musa Hassan Khan Sahib was the first Australian to enter the fold of Ahmadiyyat in 1903. The community has grown since then, establishing centres across Australia and becoming an integral part of Australian society. The first Ahmadiyya mosque in Australia was set up in Sydney, called the Baitul Huda Mosque, which was to serve as the headquarters for the community. Unlike many international leaders, Hazur spent many of his days in Australia personally meeting over 3,000 members of the community. Over the next month, Hazur would inaugurate 2 mosques in Australia, inspire thousands, and reach out to millions.
मुबारक 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 ये दिन हो मुबारक मुबारक हो ये दिन.
The arrival of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih in Australia was the perfect opportunity to hold one of the key events in the Ahmadiyya calendar, the National Annual Convention, otherwise known as the Jalsa Salana. The convention was to be attended by more than 4,000 members of the community from in and around Australia, and it was to last 3 days. During the 3 days, Hazur would address both men and women and remind them of their duties towards one another, their children and their faith, and how all should live their lives in a manner which portrays the best example for others.
अब अहमदी होने के बाद इन बातों और इन चीज़ों और उन तौक़ुआत की तलाश की ज़रूरत है जो हज़रत मसीह मौऊद अलैहिस्सलाम ने हमसे की हैं. ये जलसे के 3 दिन क्योंकि इज्तिमाई तौर पर रूहानी माहौल के दिन हैं, इसलिए इन दिनों में ख़ास तौर पर तलाश करके और यहाँ के प्रोग्रामों से फ़ायदा उठाकर हमें एक हकीकी अहमदी बनने की कोशिश करने की ज़रूरत है.
Thousands of Ahmadiyya Muslims have been coming to this mosque in Western Sydney over the past few days to catch a glimpse of the man they believe to be the Muslim equivalent of the Pope.
The arrival of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih in Australia brought considerable interest from local and national press and media. A few reporters had the opportunity to interview Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, including Bill Birtles from National Australian Broadcasting Corporation, who interviewed Hazur for ABC TV and radio for a special report delivered on national TV, covering the Jalsa and Hazur's visit.
I'd like to ask you some questions about the Muslim community over here, particularly here in Western Sydney. As you'd be aware, it's a very multicultural area. There's a fairly large Muslim community. Do you think there are particular challenges for Muslim communities living in Western societies, such as Australia?
You see, if Muslims are practicing true Islam, then there should not be any challenge in absorbing, adjusting, and living in any of the society, whether it is Western or Eastern. In a short sentence, we have made a slogan of the teachings of Islam, that is love for all and hatred for none. And if that message is there, and as I have already said, the love of your country is part of your faith, both these messages are such, or the slogans are such, that I don't feel that we have any problem in adjusting ourselves in any of the society.
During his tour of Australia, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih also visited Melbourne, the first time for a Khalifa to visit the city. During his stay there, Hazur personally met members of the community, inaugurated the Ahmadiyya Centre, a complex that can accommodate more than 2,000 people, visited the local attractions, and delivered a keynote address at a reception held in his honour.
The key themes espoused by His Holiness in many of his addresses, those of religious tolerance, loyalty to country, rejection of extremism, rebellion, disorder, commitment to community, and the pursuance of peace, they resonate with the key values of the Australian military and all true Australians. I honour the sacrifices and risks you take to bring these messages to the world, and thank you for your gracious visit to our country.
Here I would like to point out that this golden principle given by the Quran is not only for Muslims, but in fact it is a universal truth that in order to establish peace, justice must prevail. Unfortunately, when in the name of bringing peace, major powers interfere in the matters of other countries, they do not uphold the requirements of justice to the necessary degree or in minute detail. During a visit to the United States, I also addressed their senior politicians and policymakers. I clearly said to them that any act or policy they undertake to try and develop peace would never prove successful until all personal interests were set aside and until the requirements of justice were upheld in an entirely selfless manner.
I loved it. I can see why he's a leader of world peace, because he said exactly what I wanted to hear, and he touched on the countries and the problems of the world, and I can see why he is getting on with the heads of governments of other countries, and I wish all Islam leaders were like that, and we wouldn't have any trouble in the world.